So welcome back, everyone. Before we get started, I'll just remind you that you're able to submit questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I'll definitely do my best to get to them. And just wanted to remind you as well that the survey will be going out to all who registered. So just don't forget to fill it out for your chance to win one of 3 pairs of Under Armour shoes. On that note, I will welcome our second set of panelists in Alicia Warner. She is the Manager of Communications for the Edmonton Oil Kings of the Western Hockey League by way of the Ontario Hockey League. Alex Witherspoon, the Kitchener Rangers Digital Marketing Manager. Alex is in charge of planning, implementing, monitoring the Rangers marketing campaigns across all digital platforms. We have Tara Slone. Tara is the co-host of Rogers Hometown Hockey on Sportsnet, also the host of Top of Her Game, and of course, a Juno-nominated artist. And we have Jessica Platt. Jessica's the first openly transgender woman to play professional hockey in North America. She played 2 seasons with the Toronto Furies in the former CWHL, and most recently played with the PWHPA as well. Active voice in the fight for transgender rights and an equity in sports. So what an honor it is to just have so many fantastic, talented women joining us. I'll start with you, Alicia. You got your start in the OHL. Your roots are here in Kitchener, and your career has taken you out west to the WHL. So how's Alberta life treating you?
Let me unmute. Well, let me tell you, it's definitely been quite a journey. It all started back in 2009 for me in junior hockey. So last season was my 11th season in junior hockey. I started in Mississauga with the then majors, and then moved on from Mississauga to Kitchener, obviously, then out to Edmonton. Now with COVID, I'm back home in Nova Scotia. So shout out to Tara, fellow Maritimer. But yeah, it's definitely been a trip. Getting to see junior hockey, not only hockey at that level, but to get to see the game and how it varies within the CHL itself, in Ontario and on the West Coast. So it's something where you're constantly learning. It's like I said, it's been 12 years or more that I've been in sports media, and you never cease to learn something new. So from that aspect, it's phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, COVID has, of course, really impacted the junior hockey world immensely. But on an encouraging, optimistic note, the WHL season is well underway now. So I'm sure you're keeping pretty busy. Maybe you can kind of speak to what that adjustment's been like.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm here in Nova Scotia, and the guys are back on the ice in Edmonton at Rogers Place. So shout out to the Oil Kings, 4-0 to start the season. So, really happy for Kurt, Oil Kings organization. It's hard though, as someone who, I know the ladies in the last segment talk about, when you work in hockey, you don't work 9 to 5, you work maybe 8 to 6, get an hour for a quick meal in the media room, and then it's game nights, and then it's post game, whether that's media or writing or whatnot. So it's different. It's pretty difficult not to be there, to be honest. So from that standpoint, it's just following along. Everybody's really felt a change in their position with COVID in terms of, how hands-on they're able to be, whether or not they're even still working at all. So for me, it's just been really important that I did my best to try to stay ingrained and try to follow the team, keep in touch with the staff so you still feel like you're a part of that team. But by no question, it's really difficult, I feel like, for a lot of people in the business.
Definitely. And I mean, you're on completely different time zones. That means.
Yeah, that too. I'm 3 hours ahead of where the guys are in Edmonton. So there's also that. Late games are a little tougher.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. Well, Alex, you're with the Kitchener Rangers here in the OHL. Did you and Alicia work together at some point, or did the timeline of your paths not line up?
Yeah, very briefly, just as she was moving on to the Oil Kings. But yes, we did a little bit.
Very cool. Well, Alex, maybe you can kind of give us a bit of background into what your career journey has been like up until now.
Yeah. So I'm similar to Michelle in terms of I'm new to the hockey world. I started off actually in football. I'm from Hamilton, so I was a big football fan, Hamilton Tiger Cat fan. So I applied to work there, and I worked there for a couple of years just at the stadium, and then I moved on at the stores in the malls and all over the place. So with ticketing and merchandising on that side. And then I moved to Core Entertainment, which is the venues in Hamilton. So the formerly known as Cops Coliseum, and then where the studio and where the Bulldogs play. So I've been on the venue side of things before moving to Kitchener, and that was kind of interesting to see, what goes on behind the scenes that often people don't see. And then started in Kitchener just doing graphic design. So I worked with Michelle really closely. We created everything that you see for the Rangers' social accounts, everything print. Everyone always kind of asks me like, what does a graphic designer do? And it's kind of just a bunch of different things. And then this year has been a transition into more of a media role. So.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, graphic designers, media roles, I mean, you play a very important role in telling the team's story, which I imagine has been, well, I can attest to this, but it's been that much more difficult coming into a year of no OHL hockey, right?
Yes, yes. And while I didn't play hockey or was very active in sports, I was definitely a fan. And it's just so important right now to keep in touch with our fans and for them to know that, we appreciate them as a club and we're thinking about them even though we can't see them face to face right now. Super important.
Very, very important. I mean, the pandemic has affected all of us in some way. We've all really had to make pretty drastic adjustments in one way or another. But I think one of the incredible new stories, content pieces to come out of this has been the project you've been involved in, Tara, Top of Her Game. And I know Saroya Tinker in our last panel, one of your guests not too long ago. Tara, you've been openly passionate about empowering women in sports. Can you tell us a bit about how Top of Her Game came about? Is this something that you were really pushing for?
Some say openly passionate, some say super annoying. Depends which side you're sitting on, but absolutely, I'm just a flag waving feminist, and that's who I am. I'd like to kind of preface it by saying that Top of Her Game, I mean, it was born of the pandemic ultimately, or the pandemic created a space, or the kind of consciousness that there was a space on the sports landscape that was not being occupied by women's stories. So there were a number of us who really noticed this. Live sports came to a screeching halt, and still, you'd scroll through all the websites and there were stories about the Jays, there were stories about the Leafs, there were stories about men's sports, and there was nothing about women's sports. And so obviously, there's just this gaping hole in the landscape, but it's also a little bit of a result of Rogers Hometown Hockey, which I think has separated itself from conventional hockey programming, and I would like to think has been a beacon in terms of inclusivity and representation, at least an attempt. So yeah, we made it happen, and ultimately Top of Her Game was supposed to be 6 to 8 episodes, and I think we've done now like our 37th. So it's been a huge learning experience. It's been incredibly rewarding, and right now it's one of the things that's keeping me going.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about scrolling through, not seeing enough women's sports, especially during the pandemic, I feel like there's an active push sports back on the ground, but women's sports, it kind of felt like they were a bit left behind a bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, to say the least, right? I mean, everybody was searching for content, and so why are we rehashing all of this stuff when there are all these stories that
that are there to be told. So, I have to thank Sportsnet for giving us the platform and for really getting behind this project on a promotional level. So we just hope we're here to stay, and it has to be just the beginning, right? This is just one show with one particular angle. It's very much designed to inspire, but we want to expand. We want the whole landscape to expand, and that's really the point.
Well, speaking of empowering women, Jessica, you've really been blazing trails as the first transgender woman in professional sports. Your story is incredibly inspirational, and I know sharing your story has been a difficult journey. With a lack of transgender representation in this sport, I'm just wondering how that really affected your relationship with hockey over time.
Well, ultimately, it led me to quit hockey for a while. Growing up in the kind of toxic male atmosphere that was in hockey at the time when I was growing up, I didn't really feel safe. I didn't feel like it was a place where I could be who I knew I was. So, having no representation to kind of nobody to identify with was really difficult. So eventually, I quit hockey. I transitioned to make myself happy, and do what I had to do to make myself happy. And then I came back to the game, and playing at the professional level, I was given a platform, and I knew that I had to complete so I could be the representation that I would have wanted when I was younger. And that's been awesome.
I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for you. Just, it's so hard not being able to have those hockey heroes to look up to that really are representative of yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. I had players that I look up to, but I just, I looked up to them because of their style of play. It mirrored my style of play. Like, I had no one that I was like, I'm like that person, they can do it, I can do it. And that's what I want to be.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much led into my next question, but you, as I mentioned before, have been, you are such an important voice for transgender rights and for equity in sports across the board. That's obviously something you're passionate about and can speak to extremely well. What are you optimistic in the steps that are being taken right now? I imagine there's still a ways to go.
Yeah, there's definitely a ways to go. Transgender rights and transgender people in sports is just being talked about a lot more recently. There's a little bit of a longer way to go for the men's hockey communities to acceptance and full diversity and inclusion. But the women's hockey community has been incredible. I was supported from the get-go. As soon as I told them I wanted to come out publicly, as soon as I told them about me, I got nothing but support from them. So, I think a lot of sports leagues can look towards, women and, I guess women in general on a guideline of how to do things right.
Absolutely, and I mean, I'm so happy that you had a pleasant experience and that in your teammates really just being so happy for you. I mean, many would say, hockey is very behind with regards to representation in all aspects, really. What are, in your opinion, some of the steps that people involved in the league, players, teams, and leagues, what should they be doing? What are the steps they should be taking to really make sure that there aren't any barriers blocking any participants from reaching their goals?
Well, I mean, I think to start that we need to change the culture of men's hockey. It's typically, been toxic masculinity essentially, where you have to be tough, you have to be stoic, and really show emotions, feelings, and you have to toe the line, and you have to be a certain way. which doesn't make it very safe for people who, you know, are more diverse, people who may be homosexual, people who may be transgender, people who are Black, you know, and it really starts with active allyship. You know, there's a lot of people who say that they're allies and they say that they support certain people, but when it comes down to it, you know, if they hear, you know, racist talk, homophobic talk in the locker room, they don't say anything. So active allyship would be really standing up for the person, you know, stepping in and saying, hey, what you're saying is wrong, and, you know, fixing it. So I guess we need to discuss more, learn, and adapt to what we've learned.
Yeah, definitely such a between it's performative allyship versus active allyship, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, talking a bit about, you know, about barriers, I think as women, we've all felt we've had to overcome something in some capacity to kind of get to where we are now. I'll ask you, Alicia, what are some of the barriers that you feel you've faced in this industry?
I think that's a kind of a great bridge between what Jessica was just mentioning and what Soraya touched on in the first period too, is allyship. You know, I think there are many, but I think one of the biggest challenges for women trying to break into sport, whether it's as an athlete, whether it's as a broadcaster, a reporter, I think it's, you know, that level of acceptance. And you know, having an ally is so important, especially now where we're starting to grasp that attention and, you know, we have more eyes and ears than we've had in the past. I want to touch on this awesome segment that I saw. It was before the game on Saturday night on Hockey Night in Canada. And it was this great scripted piece written by Megan Mathot and read by Cassie Campbell Pascal. And right
Cassie
around the
wrote it.
middle of,
Cassie
and she wrote it.
Cassie wrote it. Yeah.
It was so good. And what caught me the most was that, you know, we're trying to leave our place in the game, but, you know, we need help. And it's not because we're not good enough at what we do, but it's going to help us if we have help from men in the game. And there are men in the game that can help us and leverage us and give us that platform that we need. And I know Michelle talked about it in the last period where, you know, she comes from a great culture in Kitchener, and Alex knows, you know, the culture there is second to none. And I was able to go back to your question, SJ, you know, a barrier that wasn't there for me that I really appreciated was how included I was. I had allies in our GM, Mike McKenzie and Murray Hebert, our head coaches, you know, Jay McKee and Mike Van Ryan, back to my Mississauga days, even back in 2009 and 10, Dave Cameron and James Boyd. They made me feel like I was a part of the team, and it just allowed me to do my job that much easier. It's such a barrier that isn't available for a lot of women, but it's something that should be so much easier to fix.
Absolutely. And Alex, as a member of the Kitchener Rangers organization right now, would you kind of agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, going into it, I feel like it's intimidating when you don't have hockey background, especially. It's almost like the assumption is that you don't know anything and you don't want to know anything. I feel like as a woman in sport, you kind of, especially in media, I feel like you get quizzed on like, oh, well, you don't know about this player, you know, you don't know any of the background of the team. So we almost have to do more research than a lot of our male counterparts do, and we have to try hard. And you know, in Kitchener, I never felt like I needed to prove myself because of my gender. So I really appreciated that, and I feel like they did make my entry into it very easy.
That's really, really fantastic to hear. Speaking of, you know, Tara, as you spoke a little bit about how hometown hockey and how this kind of paved the way for you to be able to get to a point where we can launch things like Top of Her Game. In your travels with hometown hockey, I know COVID has kind of put that on hiatus for now, but you've been able to see so many young girls across the country. How does that resonate with you?
Oh my God. I mean, young people in general, but of course, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes on a regular basis. And especially in contrast, when we interview people who were really there at the inception, Hazel McCallion and Fran Ryder and, the women who really have stuck their necks out in the very beginning, Angela James. They did not grow up seeing people that looked like them on different levels. And Jessica, that experience and what you would give to have that. It's starting to sound like a cliche because I think we throw it around a lot, but it's true. If she can see it, she can be it. And I just think it makes the path visible, rather than having to cut away the brush. It's there. And so I love when I talk to young girls and they have a favorite women's hockey player. I mean, it just wasn't the case. It wasn't the case when I was a kid. So it's an absolutely beautiful thing. And now, I would like that to extend to Black girls and trans girls. And so I think, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of like the intersectional aspect of women in the game, but we're getting there. We're starting.
Absolutely. Well, we're definitely starting. Well, Jessica, you talked about, toxic masculinity, a major problem in hockey. What advice can you give young women or people who just don't really conform with those masculine ideals of the industry, and who really want to be able to carve their own path out as a professional athlete or as an industry leader in the space?
The advice that I would give them is, just to have confidence in who you are and in your abilities. That there's always going to be someone out there that might tell you that you're not good enough, you're not skilled enough, you don't know enough, or whatever. But you can't listen to those naysayers. People love to try and tear down people who are succeeding. So, I mean, you work hard, you believe in yourself, and you set goals, really, the sky's the limit. You can achieve anything.
And in order for women to be provided with equal opportunity to advance in the game, what needs to change right now?
To be provided equal opportunity, well, I do a little bit of work with You Can Play, which essentially is, if you can play, you can play. You should be judged based on your skill, your abilities, not your gender identity, your sexuality, anything like that. So, where was I going with this? That's how we can fix this. People, should be judged based on, if they're the most qualified for the job, if they're the most skilled, they have the most experience, not based on if they're a man or a woman, because from what I hear, a lot of hockey is, like the old white guys club, essentially. And it's changing. I can see it changing, but that still sticks around in some of the clubs, some of the cities. So I think we just need to hire the most qualified candidates, and that's it. Point blank, just hire who's the most qualified.
And hopefully move towards a space where people aren't automatically thinking men when they're thinking who to hire.
Exactly.
This question's going to be for Alex. I'm just wondering, we have a lot of girls and women on the call looking to carve out their own path, their own career in hockey. What's the biggest piece of advice you would provide to them, or even to your younger self?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, it's intimidating. And I think in any job, it's hard. Like the first year is really hard. Like Michelle said, we don't have the same hours as everyone else does. And just be patient. Like you can't learn everything in one day. And you can take experience from a lot of different things. So it's good that people can come into, the sporting industry and not be directly from another sport or not be interested in sports. And like, this is how we get different opinions and this is how we have different conversations. You know, maybe you learn something from like an art world that can apply to a sport world. So I think it's good that people are coming from different backgrounds and they can share and they have experience in their industry that they can apply to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, it's so valuable to hire people with a wealth of different kinds of experience, I would think, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we all have just so much perspective to bring in that sense. So Alicia, I'll pose the same question to you. What kind of advice would you give your younger self or to the future girls and women looking to break out in this field?
I would say twofold. I would say the first thing, and Jessica, I think, just touched on it too, is you know, don't give anybody a reason to say that you weren't good enough. It shouldn't matter if you're a woman. It shouldn't matter how you identify. It shouldn't matter your race. It's no different than being, say, an athlete. You know, if you expect to make a team, if you expect to make a league, then you have to be a good enough athlete to get there, and you have to get there on your own merits. It's similar in a broadcasting world, in a journalism world. You know, if you're good enough at what you do, nobody should be able to say no. You should be able to get there on your talent and on your motivation and on your knowledge. You know, I got into sports because my dad owned a sports card shop when I was little. So every day I would go to his card shop and I would look up hockey cards in the Beckett to try to see, you know, what the value of this card is. And, you know, oh, a Zygmunt Palffy card's 50 cents, but Pavel Bure is $1. So you start learning the game in so many different ways. And one way I was really, I guess, able to prove myself was that, you know, I was never put under the table in a conversation. I could always, because I knew that I knew my stuff. So from the first standpoint, I would say to any woman that's trying to break in any element of the game is just know your stuff and refuse to be refused. And secondly, you know, this year's hashtag for International Women's Day is choose to challenge. And one thing that I always made a point of doing was challenging myself to get better. You know, no guy in the NHL scores 20 goals one year and goes, yeah, that's good enough. He's going to try to score 30 the next year. So always, you know, make yourself uncomfortable, push yourself to learn something new, to, you know, learn more about something you thought you knew a lot about. If you're constantly improving, you're again taking away reasons for people to say no to you.
I really, really like that advice.
Thanks.
That's great. Tara, I mean, you're a fantastic role model for young girls hoping to break into the broadcasting industry. What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give people who are hoping to follow a path similar to yours?
Well, my path is unconventional. My trajectory is a little bit strange, I think, compared to most. I started out as a rock musician and moved into television, and then really intentionally started to position myself towards hockey. And so things unfolded in a very fortuitous way. I knocked on a lot of doors. I wrote a lot of letters. I mean, I think sort of two lessons for me that I take away from my path so far is, first of all, just go for it. You know, I think opportunities present themselves in all kinds of different ways. Go for it and ask for it. I mean, people don't know, like, I remember when the press release came across my desk that, you know, Rogers had the rights to the NHL for 12 years. And there was a guy, Ron McLean, called Rogers Hometown Hockey. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, that sounds like the perfect show for me. But I didn't tell anybody that I thought that. And actually, it was a producer that I was working with who said, you know, you need to tell them because they don't know that you want that. And so I ended up writing a letter to the president of Sportsnet, and the door opened that way. So I would say, you know, yell, scream, knock, jump at opportunities, you know, go with the twists and turns. But also, I mean, I have to preface it by saying that I think I'm in a very privileged position. I think, you know, as a middle-aged woman who's been in this business for a while, as a white woman with a certain platform, I'm able to also speak my mind a little bit more than, you would feel empowered to in your 20s. But I think don't be also afraid to point out when things are not right. And I understand that's easier said than done. And I understand that people are not always put in a position where they have the space to feel empowered to do that. But when and where you can, when you see inequity around you, when you see that the conversation is not being directed at you, but going right past you, when you see that you're not being included or people around you are not being elevated to the place that they should be, speak up if you have the power to do so. And that is, I mean, that's for young women, and that's for anybody. That's for men, and that's allyship too.
Absolutely. It's definitely important advice. One of the things I really wanted to ask you was, we around this time, around International Women's Day, we start to see a lot of all-female broadcasts, which is phenomenal. It's progress in of itself. When will we get to a point where that's the norm? Are we close to that point? Are we far away from that point?
I don't think we're that close. But I do think, we just have to start normalizing women being included in broadcasts in front of the camera. And I think the absence is more on the other side of production, really. But voices, play-by-play, color commentary. I think, of course, like Sportsnet did one last year, and there are a couple of all-female broadcasts. The Raptors are going to do one this year as well. That is great because it's just demonstrating like this is what we do every day. We're professionals. But we just have to keep normalizing this. When Cassie Campbell Pascal started to do color, it was like, what, a woman's voice? Like, we've never heard this before. Oh, egads. And now that makes me really old that I just said that. But now, to me, hearing, I think people have just, it's enveloped into the culture. So I think it's more of a matter of that.
Fantastic. And Jessica, I'm going to pose this question to you. You've come such a long way, and as you spoke to before, your relationship with hockey has come and gone quite a bit. What's something that you'd really like to tell your younger self?
What I would like to tell my younger self is that there's nothing wrong with you. You are who you are, and once you really accept yourself for who you are, you're going to find happiness, love, acceptance, and you're going to succeed in your life. And that is something I would tell this kid. And one of the lessons that I've learned along the way, is that there's always going to be someone there to tear you down if they're seeing you succeed. It's sad but true. Someone always wants to tear you down. They have something inherently wrong with seeing other people happy for some reason. But have confidence in yourself, love yourself, and know the difference between those people that want to tear you down and the people who actually matter. The people who support you, the people who are around you, the people who are building you up and who are empowering you. Just really appreciate those people too.
Yeah, that's really, really great. And also kind of a nice lead into the one of the questions that have come in through the Q&A. As a sports management student entering the field, what are some of the ways I can make the business of sports more inclusive?
Well, I would say to make it more inclusive it goes back to the active allyship, and creating a culture, where people feel safe and included. You don't want someone to feel unsafe because they're a woman, because everyone else that's hired is male and constantly talking down about women, or think that they're all that just because, and that the women don't know anything. So just make it inclusive, and be an active ally.
Now, Alicia, you spoke in great detail to, having that confidence and really just ensuring everyone knows that, like, you know your stuff, you really belong in this. Someone has one of the questions that have just come in. What is the best comeback you've had to someone who tried to question your legitimacy?
Oh my gosh, if this is not being put on the spot, I don't know what is. I don't know. Like I said, my dad had a card shop when I was little. So it probably was just like some chirp about like that I didn't know players. And then I would have like ran through to like, all 4 lines and 3 deep pairings of the Leafs in like 2002 or something. Like I was like a huge hockey card collector, but then I was also like big stats nerd. And so, yeah, it was probably when I was like 12 and I just like put a neighbor in his place because I knew more hockey players' names than he did. But yeah, like I said, don't ever let anyone dare tell you that just because you're a girl that you don't know enough about hockey or you don't know as much about hockey as a guy or whatever, because I'm living proof, like I've put a couple of my buddies in their place, and I always used to joke around, that nobody really wanted to, go have a pop with me and watch the game because, I'd pick up on more than they would, or, I'd kind of point out their mistakes or their critiques when they were picking apart plays. So, believe in yourself. It's not always easy to do. I know it can be difficult to believe in yourself if you don't feel like you have people that believe in you, but fake it till you make it. Not all days are going to be good days. And sometimes you've got to pretend, but the longer you pretend, the quicker it starts to feel real. And then it is real. And, nobody can ever take away all those stats in your head and all those games you've watched. And you always know that you've done it. So you always have that.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Tara, can I put you on the spot for the same question?
Oh no, I was just thinking, I honestly, I can't remember. I'm never very good in the moment. I think of things like later. But my MO is I typically, I get a ton of nasty stuff on Twitter. And most of it I just let go. But every once in a while I will find one that I would like to make an example of, and I just let the masses have at them. It's it sounds like cruel and unusual punishment, but I also think it's really important for people to see what kind of trolling we're getting on a regular basis. And I know that I've got a great community of believers out there who will school that person for me. So I can't tell you what kind of comeback I've had, but it's hard. I think, people underestimate other people for all kinds of different reasons. So, but as long as you have the confidence that you can hold your own, there's nothing they can do.
Yeah, women definitely are faced with so much harassment on social media, and it's tough to deal with. It's tough to deal with.
It is, and yeah, I actually do think it's a bigger problem than maybe we let on. I think it actually needs addressing. I can't believe the behavior that's not just tolerated but enabled.
Mm-hmm.
But again, luckily, I think, I do think there's a great hockey community on social media that really do have each other's backs.
Definitely, I would agree with that. There's we're all in the same boat in some capacity. We have different experiences. Like you said, some of us come from points of privilege, but I find the community can be good at, when you just have all these arms to help lift you up.
That's the saving grace of Twitter, because we know on one side it can be the cesspool that it is. But on the other side, I do think I have felt supported at times when I've really needed it.
That's great. It's crucial. It's so important. Well, to wrap up this segment, I'll finish on, a positive, uplifting question, I guess you could say. I'll pose this to you, Alex. What is the best part about working in this industry?
I mean, you get to be a fan professionally, in my opinion. I mean, it's just so much fun. You get to work with a bunch of different people. No day is the same. Some days, you know, we don't score any goals, and it's not always fun to be around the dressing room. But some days, you know, a kid who didn't get drafted or got drafted later ends up scoring like his 50th goal, and it's just like it's unreal. And then you get to see those kids move on to the NHL, and they eventually, you know, play on another team and win a Stanley Cup. So it's like living your dream basically, which is fun. Your hobby is now your job. That's what I would say.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for being able to watch these young players kind of grow into superstars, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely something special. Jessica, I'll ask you the same thing. What do you enjoy most about being such a big part of this hockey community and working, doing all this work in the industry now?
You know, what I've enjoyed the most is all the experiences I've had and the people I've met. I mean, I've played with and against some of the best players in the world. I've traveled, you know, to Calgary, Montreal, China a couple of times, you know, all over the place to play hockey. And these have been truly special experiences to me. And to be able to play with people that, you know, I watch on the national teams, it's something special. But mostly to be able to share my story and educate people has been truly a joy. I've been able to give my voice to others, you know, with similar experiences that, you know, I may have had, who, you know, might feel that they need a voice to speak for them because they can't due to their circumstances. So really to, you know, kind of be that person that people can look to and see that they can do it too has been the best.
Yeah, I can imagine how rewarding that is, and just it goes such a long way.
Yeah, it's amazing. I never would have expected this, and it's just been the most amazing couple of years for me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for being such an important part of the hockey community and all the great work that you do.
Always a pleasure.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our second period here. So huge thank you to Alexandria, Tara, Alicia, and Jessica for taking the time to chat. I really enjoyed this discussion. And yeah, thanks again for all your time and all your amazing perspectives.
Thanks, SJ.
Thank you.
See you, ladies.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Well, we will take a 1-minute break, get a glass of water, stretch your legs a bit, and we will return for our keynote speaker in just a bit.